drones moved through physical space, but images, narratives, memes, and manufactured certainty moved through cognitive space of ours that has influenced each one of us. We saw old footages being presented as new. We've seen synthetic images presented as evidence, memes carrying strategic messages faster than official statements, and algorithms of everything that we use rewarding the most emotionally compelling account long before anyone could establish whether if it was even true. The battlefield was not only territory, it was all about interpretation. And as marketers and communicators, you'd appreciate that space. All of us scrolling through our screens became active participants of it, wittingly or unwittingly. Not always knowing whether what we were watching was documentation or manipulation, entertainment, if you think of the Lego campaign, or something unsettling with a combination of all of these. So a conversation about rebuilding trust cannot begin with marketing alone. It must begin with reality. Because trust depends upon a very basic human confidence. And some of you touched upon this when we were having our discussions. That we can distinguish what is happening from what someone wants us to believe is happening. It's a clear discernment that we need to have as humans, that words still correspond to actions, and when circumstances change, truth will not be quietly rewritten to accommodate them. This is why our challenge is not so simply to get growth and moving again. The question is moving again towards what? I think that's a big question that we need to ask ourselves. Is it back to the old normal? Is it back to systems that were already struggling with distrust, fragmentation, and short-termism? We touched upon this earlier as well. I think the question is much harder for us to reflect on. What kind of growth can survive in a world where reality itself can be contested in real time? I think in real time is the key here. And what role must marketing play in building it? So the thought I want to leave here today is a simple one. When reality becomes contestable, trust becomes cognitive infrastructure. It becomes foundational. And the organizations that grow will not be those that generate the most analysis, the most content, or the most persuasive stories. They will be those that remain most grounded. For most of modern business history, intelligence was scarce. Research was expensive. We complained about it for this region. Expertise was concentrated, and analysis took a lot more time than what demand was demanding. Knowledge accumulated through years of experience, institutional memory, and judgment. Our organizations were built around that scarcity. And AI is now dissolving that entire model, which we need to wake up to. So every organization will soon be able to generate a lot more research, a lot more scenarios, more strategies, more content, and more recommendations that any leadership team could possibly absorb. That's the reality. Every company will be able to sound informed, to sound confident, and also to sound intelligent. There's a big difference. And that is precisely the problem we're going to face as we move forward. Because when intelligence becomes abundant, intelligence alone stops being your advantage. it becomes a parity product. So the advantage becomes the ability to anchor intelligence into a reality. That's where the human component comes into play. To know which signal matters, which interpretation is credible, which promise is responsible, which perfectly articulates answers to which decisions are all grounded, right? So the capability is what we have described as grounded competence. So all of you all working on AI, working on marketing, should start now investing into the fundamentals of grounded competence. It's not simply about knowing more. It's the ability to interpret abundance intelligence, not just as humans, but you and your agents, with the real constraints of systems, incentives, context, and consequence. AI can generate possibilities, but someone must determine which possibilities are real. AI can stimulate future, but someone must understand how culture, emotion, history, power, and human behavior may alter them. AI can recommend an action and produce the messages, as a lot of us are experiencing now. But someone must ensure that the organization can live with that promise it contains, which is what Saurabh was talking about. This is the grounding gap, and it will become one of the defining sources of competitive advantage in the years ahead for us as marketeers. For decades, our profession has been designed primarily as an amplification system. More reach, more visibility, more engagement, more persuasion. AI will make us infinitely better at doing this. It can produce thousands of variations. It can adapt tone and format. It can hyper-personalize content. It can even predict behavior in real time. And eventually, it can conduct millions of simultaneous conversations. But when amplifications becomes almost limitless, amplification itself is no longer the differentiator like intelligence. So then what is it? So the more important question becomes, what are we really amplifying as a brand? Is it true? Is it complete? Is it responsible? Is it consistent with what the organization is actually doing or can deliver? And what happens when the message is distributed at scale where no human team could ever supervise? That's also going to be our next new reality. So the next evolution of marketing cannot therefore be only from manual work to intelligent automation. It must be from amplification to grounding. Marketing must become one of those functions that keeps the organization connected to reality. So within G42, we are now working, and we're nearly there, to move away from becoming a department to an intelligence engine of the entire organization. Okay, so it's the Uberization of marketing and communication to everyone within the organization, where they don't have to come to us. They just execute. We just nudge like orchestrators from behind based on what the system is. It's a complete paradigm shift. So marketing must become one of those functions that keeps the organization connected, not the function that finds more compelling ways to say something that the organization cannot deliver. Marketing must move closer to the place where meaning, behavior, and consequences are decided. Because communication is not simply a production function. And you will see this with more and more AI tools in the marketing function. It just becomes like a hyperscale production facility that you're churning things out. It should actually become a decision system operating under ambiguity. The message people eventually see is only the visible end of a much deeper process. Before the final sentence, there is judgment, there is disagreement and tension between ambition and feasibility, between speed and accuracy, and between what is persuasive and what is right. And that becomes very important for any brand. So the strongest communications team create value through quality of thinking and negotiation that precedes the writing of your campaigns. There is another structural shift we need to understand. Organizations are no longer communicating only with human audiences. There's a new cast of character in the room. AI systems now sit between institutions and people they want to reach. They're searching, ranking, summarizing, and filtering on their behalf. Back in Jan of 2025 at G42, our human capital team was renamed as the Augmented Human Capital Team, where our human capital team is looking at the social contract of us working with our colleagues who are agents. And what happens to the social contract of trust, of accountability? I might be signing off something that my agent has processed to say it is true, right? And then if something works, who gets the credibility for it? Do I get the bonus or the agent? We laugh, but these are really important questions for us to reflect on. So AI systems now sit between institutions and the people they want to reach. And a customer may never read your full statement. They may receive an AI-generated summary, right? So an investor system may compare your sustainability claims against regulatory filings, public data, and previous commitments. So again, to the point of trust, you can say what you want, but that AI agent is going to go and dig and see if you're greenwashing and all of that. And there goes your campaign and brand. So marketing is moving from direct persuasion into a world of mediated interpretation. Very important concept. The audience is a hybrid ecosystem of people, of platforms, of models, and agents. And you will not have control of all of them, but you can have control of some of them. Your brand is no longer only what you say. It is what a network of humans and machines can verify, infer, and reconcile from everything you have ever said and done in your lifetime as a brand. The campaign may be temporary, the contradictions remains searchable. It's a huge shift. The promise may be emotional and you can stir something, but the verification would be very, very analytical. And that's where marketers are going to struggle. And this is why trust is not merely technical, it's data integrity, it's governance, and security matters. But trust has never been produced by infrastructure alone. Trust is accumulated alignment. It happens over a period of time. It grows when an organization says repeatedly, corresponds to what it does. A brand stripped of all its jargons is a promise about future behavior. And reputation is the institutional memory of whether that promise was kept or not. So technology can make those patterns very easy to detect within seconds. It cannot manufacture their integrity. AI may become one of the most powerful auditors of trust we have ever created. This will not be based on human research anymore going forward. But the raw material of trust will remain profoundly human. Intent, consistency, competence, transparency, and consequence. We touched on most part of those in our conversation earlier. There is another risk we need to recognize. The greatest threat may not be synthetic content, which again is already happening. It may be synthetic certainty. AI systems are extraordinarily good at producing very coherent answers. And I want you to take a few minutes to understand this. But reality is not always coherent. It contains ambiguity, contradictions, and competing interpretations. So while you speak to your ChatGPT and Claude and all of that, just have that ingrained in yourself. It's quite complex, and you need to discern. So when intelligence systems compress that complexity into a neat, fluent summary, they may create the appearance of agreement where none exists, making an unstable interpretation feel settled simply because it has been expressed clearly. Two different things. And that is a very dangerous form of distortion that we need to be aware of, because it can look like clarity, it can look like competence or truth, but not misinformation. And this is why leaders and communicators need to become far more comfortable with honest uncertainty. And that's the role that you will have with your leadership and board. Organizations are constantly pressured to sound certain, more so now because now you have the tools. How can you not know? And there's always this thing to reward the decisive statement, the confident executive, the bold promise. But there are moments when certainty is not leadership. It is pure theater. The most trustworthy thing an organization can sometimes say is, we don't know yet. Here is what we can verify. Here is what remains uncertain. And here is what we are doing next. Honest uncertainty does not weaken trust. False certainty does. And that's something that we have to be mindful when communicating to our clients, consumers, and stakeholders. The communicator's responsibility is to help people navigate uncertainty without losing contact with reality. This brings us to another concept. I know I'm giving it in the fire hose of different fundamentals, but this is about intent. Another huge, huge concept. Because most conversations about AI focuses on capability. What can the system write, predict, or automate? And at what speed and at what cost? Okay, so we did discuss this earlier that a lot of these AI automations are not working. The use cases did. That's true because most of those briefs were wrong in the first place, because it had innate human frame biases. Capability doesn't determine direction. Intent does. The most important question is not simply what can this AI system do? It is, what is the system allowed to optimize? Engagement, reach, conversation, emotional intensity, short-term compliance, or long-term credibility of the institution? We need to ask those questions. A message can travel widely and quietly weaken trust. So it's the unwitting consequence of what you would do using AI that you wouldn't realize on your brand matrix for a long, long time. A system can become extremely efficient at achieving the wrong objectives. Very important for us to be mindful of. And this is where the leadership challenge begins. When speed conflicts with accuracy, which wins? There's no straight answer. When persuasion crosses into manipulation, where does the system stop? And where does the brand integrity come in? Important question as well. You want to sell, but at what cost? When a model recommends the commercial attractiveness action, but it's a socially damaging one, what principles must govern your AI system? in marketing and communication is a question you need to ask and define now. So intent cannot remain an abstract value written on the wall of an organization. It must become a part of the operating architecture. The task layer tells a system what to do. The context layer tells it what it needs to know. But the intent layer tells it what should matter when objectives collide. Without that layer, systems may become capable without becoming trustworthy. Autonomy can be distributed, judgment cannot be outsourced. So, what does grounding look like in practice? I would suggest 4 simple questions before a major message, before a campaign, or before integrating an AI system that you'd like to deploy. Ask first what is materially true of what you're communicating, not what is convenient. Second, what is the context? What history, culture, or lived experience changes the meaning of what you are saying? Third, what are the consequences? And here, what are the second and third order effects if this message is amplified at scale is what we need to look at beyond the first order, because this is happening at scale now. And fourth, will our actions remain coherent with our words? Can the organization keep the promise? Will our operations support the story? These are not communication checks to perform after a decision. They are decision checks to perform before your communication. So if the answers are unclear, the solution is not to add more content. It is to add more judgment. And this is where growth returns to our conversation. We often treat growth and trust as opposing factors. It's quite interesting. Growth for the commercial guys and trust for governance, reputation, brand, one hard and the other one soft. That separation is becoming impossible with the confluence of all things AI. Because in a world of AI-assisted scrutiny, permanent institutional memory and near instant comparison, trust is not a soft outcome. It's surrounded by growth. So it is the part of the infrastructure through which growth becomes possible. Customers buy when they trust the promise. Investors commit when they trust judgment. Employees will follow when they trust the direction. When trust is absent, every decision becomes more expensive. It'll become more legal, more verification, more hesitation, more delays, and more friction in your brand journey. Trust can reduce that friction of human coordination. And that is why it has a direct economic value that we need to talk to our boards and our CFOs. The organizations that grow sustainably will be those who claims survive interpretation of humans and machines, whose promises survive contact with reality, and whose intelligence remains grounded. So perhaps the future of marketing is not primarily about becoming more intelligent. Intelligence is already coming. In fact, it's already here. And soon it'll be abundant, it'll be inexpensive, and it'll be extremely, extremely powerful. And it will be available to almost everyone, your boss, your board, your consumer, to everyone. Content will also be infinite. Just imagine what's going to happen when everyone has this superpower to create content. Persuasion will also become hyper-programmable, right? But then if every brand, every category does that, what does that translate into? I don't know, but it's going to be a new world. In fact, in many ways, personalization might end up becoming more ambient. We don't know that yet. But none of those capabilities answer the most important question, is what grounds our intelligence? What keeps our system connected to reality? And what gives a customer, an employee, a citizen, or your AI acting on your behalf a reason to believe in you, your brand, and your communication? We just lived through a moment in which images could be generated in seconds, certainty could travel around the world in minutes, and truth could take days to catch up before it was validated. This is not only a warning for governments, it is not only a warning for media platforms or news organizations, it is a warning for every institution that is represented in this room. Because in the months and years ahead, content will be abundant. Persuasion will become programmable, and intelligence will be available on demand. But trust will still need to be earned. Not by the organizations that speak most confidently, but those that remain coherent when the world is confused. Those that make reality easier, not harder, to see. And those that stay grounded. Growth cannot be rebuilt by asking people to believe more. We strongly believe that it'll be rebuilt by giving them fewer reasons to doubt us. Thank you very much for your audience. You've been very patient. I know this has been long, but I hope you've taken something from it.
Thank you very much, Fahim. I would like to call on stage my next panel. Any order you want. We will introduce each of you. Thank you all. Let me very quickly introduce you through our panel. We have next to me Zainab Al Amrawi. Zainab is the marketing director EMEA for Subway. She previously worked with Unilever, Domino's, Yum. Next to her, Rita Gamagami. Oops, sorry,
It's all right.
I skipped you, Hind. Sorry about that.
Keep going. You can do me last.
No. That's Hind Abu Alia